Hello, my name is Tanay Tiwari and welcome to our coverage to the build-up of the World Test Championship Final, where today we look at India's heroes in this World Test Championship cycle. Man of steel, Ajinkya Rahane has been there and done that throughout his career, and yet he finds himself in such situations where he must prove his mettle. Sometimes because of lack of consistency, sometimes because of just the sheer weight of competition waiting on the outside. And almost every time Ajinkya Rahane comes out shining, and came out shining he did in this World Test Championship cycle as well, where he ended as India's highest run scorer in this campaign. And not only that, he also shepherded and captained India in perhaps one of the toughest test series that they had, where by the end of the test series, they were virtually playing a second 11. For him to lead that side to win the series 2-1, create history in Australia, was really something else. And remember, it all started when he picked up the pieces of that Adelaide 36 all-out disappointing performance in Melbourne, where he picked up the pieces, scored a century, grabbed the momentum from Australia, one that Australia could not wrest back throughout the series. Ajinkya Rahane has really been a hero for India in this WTC campaign. Quite like Ajinkya Rahane, Ravichandran Ashwin, despite his stellar credentials, also finds himself in similar situations. This World Test Championship was no different, where he ended the campaign as India's highest wicket-taker, but also as the leading wicket-taking spinner in this campaign, only behind Pat Cummins and Stuart Broad in the overall tally of wicket-takers. He picked crucial wickets at crucial junctures, but in addition to that, he stood up when his team required him to stand up with the bat as well, an aspect of his game that seemed like tapering away in the last few years. Be it that gritty draw in Sydney against Australia, where he batted with a sore back with a Hanuma Vihari at the other end who had a torn hamstring, or that century against England in the second Chennai Test, where he walked into bat at 86 for 5. He'd already picked 8 wickets in the Test match, but his century drove England into the grounder position they just could not come back up from throughout the series. R. Ashwin has really been one of the pillars for Team India on which they've built the edifice of their journey to the WTC Final. Now here's a name you didn't think would feature in the list of India's heroes in the World Test Championship journey, because when the WTC journey started for India, he wasn't even a playing member in that squad. And yet, once he was given that opportunity against South Africa to open the batting, barring a few injuries here and there, he's not really looked back ever since. Be it those daddy hundreds and doubles against South Africa, to his solid presence at the top of the order alongside a young Shubman Gill in Australia, to that century against England in the second test which wrested the momentum back in India's favour, Rohit Sharma's resurgence as a test batsman and his revelation as a test opener has been a spectacle throughout this World Test Championship journey. He ends this cycle as India's second highest run scorer, leaving behind the likes of Virat Kohli, Cheteshwar Pujara, showing that he's had the ability throughout to play Test cricket, and Indian fans could not be happier. There are some cricketing stories that can't really be told in numbers, which is why if you look at Cheteshwar Pujara's record in this WTC cycle, it doesn't make for a pretty read. 818 runs at an average that slipped below 30 now, no century to show against his name throughout this championship cycle. You'd say Cheteshwar Pujara may not really be one of India's heroes in this WTC cycle. And yet to discount his grit and determination to bat for long periods out there would be criminal. As was witnessed in that Sydney Test and then at the Gabba as well, where he kept batting, kept driving Australia's bowlers into the ground with his grit and determination, kept taking blows on his body but was unflinched. And this is the unflinching Cheteshwar Pujara that the Aussies were scared of in 2018 and 19 as well. So when he started doing that again, the Aussies were on the back foot. Which is why Cheteshwar Pujara, who's the binding force of that Indian middle order, might not really have the numbers to show this World Test Championship cycle, but he really has some battle wounds to display. Quite like the Cheteshwar Pujara story, the Rishabh Pant story this WTC cycle is not really in the numbers, it's in the impact that he's had. Now remember, when India started on their WTC journey, he was always the second pick wicketkeeper because India would pick a specialist wicketkeeper in Wriddhiman Saha ahead of Rishabh Pant. Then came the pandemic break where India were dethroned from the number 1 spot, a spot that they'd ruled over since the beginning of the WTC cycle. Now India needed to win 2 of their toughest assignments in the cycle, one against Australia in Australia and another against England in India. Enter Rishabh Pant. He started Australia's tour as India's second wicketkeeper again, behind Wriddhiman Saha, but by the end of that tour, because of the impact that his knocks had, he was one of the first names written on that team sheet. He became virtually undroppable. First, that heist that he almost pulled off in Sydney, then a heist that he actually pulled off at the Gabba, and then come the England series, that century at Ahmedabad where he did something that only Rishabh Pant can. He hit James Anderson, the leading wicket-taker in Pacers in Test cricket history, for a reverse sweep over the slip cordon for a 4. Rishabh Pant does things on the cricket ground that only Rishabh Pant can, which is why his impact is so immense. That, coupled with consistency now in the Test department, Rishabh Pant is a force to reckon with even in the whites and will be a key member for Team India in that WTC final. Those are our picks for India's heroes in this WTC cycle, and we've not touched upon the likes of Ravindra Jadeja, the likes of Hanuma Vihari. Would your list look different? We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to share your list of India's WTC heroes with us on Twitter. That's all from us on this update.